Things look promising for about 44 minutes of this game for the 76ers and the Kings. And then the final 4 minutes did happen for the 76ers, especially in the late stages of this fourth quarter. And we're here to talk about it with you on a late night once again. Sixers fall 113-107 to the Sacramento Kings. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers Postgame Show presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Along with Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck, I'm Devon Gibbons. Bree is producing as always. All of you frustrated in the chat. We could see it already, and rightfully so, after the 76ers up by 1.9 points in the fourth quarter there in the final 5 minutes. Kings cut it to 7, and then they started to go. And then they ended up having things go their way, some bad turnovers by the Sixers. They're late, and they end their 4-game winning streak once again with a 113-107 loss to the Sacramento Kings. We'll get to the player of the game a little bit later. And, of course, a ton of things to talk about here as Kyle. This one was not pretty in the end, as it looked like the Sixers were going to eke out and squeeze out a close win over the Kings, but unfortunately, they just could not execute things down the stretch.
I mean, honestly, I didn't think it should be close down the stretch of this game. Like, they had several opportunities where it felt like better execution, you pull away, better lineup choices, you pull away, better play from your stars, you pull away. And so you leave it to the final 3, 4, 5 minutes, and Sacramento at that point is playing better. De'Aaron Fox is playing better than anyone on the Sixers and for most of that fourth quarter. And this was just a complete team-wide failure in crunch time, right? So everyone always wants the singular scapegoat, like, oh, it was this guy. It was all of them. It was mainly, I would say, Tyrese and Paul, and a little bit of the head coach for not getting things organized, not figuring some things out. I would say my problem for the game was how Maxey played, and so I think it made his down the stretch play more disappointing for me. The box score looks okay, right? Like below average efficiency, but not terrible. Assists are okay. 5 steals is like, oh, he played good defense. I just feel like a lot of those numbers are kind of lying. Like I think probably 2 or 3 of his assists tonight are on plays where he's basically falling down and is throwing up prayers to guys, and he gets bailed out by shot making. And the Kings threw, I'd say, several different things at him down the stretch of this game. So De'Aaron Fox defending him is one. And Devon, you had mentioned him being a good defender before the game. You could tell that his size and his length really bothered Tyrese. Like that possession right before Malik Monk went the other way and got goaltended, and that was the basket to put them ahead for good. Maxey picked up his dribble at like the free throw line and just had absolutely no plan. Now, the possession before that, the Kings trapped him and they tried to hard hedge, and Maxey did what he had tried to do and had successfully done at points in the game and tried to split it. And the Kings were sitting on it. They were waiting for it. And they turned him over. They went the other way. And so he didn't react well to anything they threw at him. And that, if you're the lead guard, the point guard running the team, ultimately it falls on you to be the leader on the floor, the organizer of the offense. And so I'm not sitting here saying it's all his fault, right? But he gets a big portion of the blame for me.
Yeah, and one thing I certainly agree with you on was the assist numbers. I thought this was a real step back in terms of his vision off the dribble. Obviously, I think that run started with that Paul George forearm push-off. And then the very next Sixers possession was him going 3-on-1 that turned into a, bad missed runner and a Kings transition bucket the other way. I think that's where Paul then got his 5th foul on that. And it was just the decision making from him was not there. And he had some points where he was making shots in the third quarter and he made that stat line look okay, but they needed more from him. They needed more. Defensively, I thought for the most part, he had his moments. He was okay. Offensively, decision making was just not there. And when you have so little margin for error because you're playing without the big guy, you need your two guys to make good decisions, and forget about making shots and missing shots. Forget about, all kinds of other things in terms of like loose ball and getting. You need them to make good decisions, and they just failed time and time again in the last 5 minutes of a very winnable game. They were up 9 points with 5 minutes to go, and they just completely pissed it away. It was really, really infuriating. Nobody had an answer, not Paul, not Tyrese, not Nick, nobody. And they also then didn't get stops down the stretch either. And when you do all that, you come up with one of your worst losses of the season. And obviously, this is a team, it's different than some of the other bad losses to start the season, where you're losing to like just really nonsense teams like the Raptors. But this one hurts because you had been playing good basketball, because you had a star performance from Paul George through the first, 44 minutes of the game, because you had a controlling lead over a team that was in free fall, and you just slipped it away from mostly unforced errors. It was really, really tough. And look, there's going to be a lot of people that will completely lose their minds. I do think the general trend is still positive with the way they're playing, but this was a golden opportunity. And we're going to sit here, we had been talking about it before, where they're a half game out of the eighth, or a game out of the eighth seed, and like 3 out of the 6th seed, and they're getting real close, and there's still a lot left, and they're playing better basketball. You can't go throwing these away. You should have won this game. You should have won it convincingly. And they just made every mistake. It was wild.
And even after that bad turnover that led to the game being tied at 107, he then compounds that by going back the other way on the Sixers' offensive possession, and has that runner that it wasn't even really a runner. It was, as Kyle said, he got picked up right at the free throw line by De'Aaron Fox, where he forced him, and he starts to pivot and doesn't know what to do with the basketball, and he just throws it up towards the rim. And again, he's expecting a call from the official instead of just playing under control, getting himself situated, and not picking the ball up like he did. You just saw that far too many times in this one. And after Paul George carried them in the first half with his offense the way that he was playing, finding his offense the way that he did, Maxey did a pretty good job on the offensive end of helping him pick it up, especially with the foul trouble that George was getting into, scoring in the second half overall. But then you just started to see some of those things that just got in the way. I mean, they had to be bailed out on the Caleb Martin baseline jumper to make it 107-100 on a possession. Once again, it was a good ball movement, and the ball swung, but he had the ball fake and take a tough baseline jumper to give them that 7-point lead. And that was just something that you felt like, okay, they're going to find a way to squeeze this one out, get ready to get on the plane, and head to Golden State tomorrow, and see what then happens on the second night of a back-to-back. But then one thing after another, they could not. This is where we finally saw, well, not finally, because it was happening pretty much a good portion of the night, where they did not have any rim protection, where De'Aaron Fox kept getting into the lane. Those floaters, they kept getting Malik Monk body control at the rim, both of those two getting it done. And then you saw, of course, what Sabonis was just doing all night long, and then a few other buckets. But all of that stuff just happened at the wrong time for this team, where they should have been extending the lead on certain ones. We'll even talk about, as we're talking about turnovers, Paul George's turnover getting trapped right there in front of the scorer's table along the baseline, and then trying to bullet pass a pass to Yabusele.
And he had a guy wide open in the corner.
To his left.
Wide open,
sorry.
yes.
It wasn't Yabusele in the base under the paint. It was Gordon, and he tried to drill it to Gordon when Yabusele was wide open to his left. Even if he lofted it, Derek, over the top of the defender, Yabusele most likely gets that basketball. So just bad decision-making by the two guys that you really count on to make the right choices there in the end. And they just did not.
Well, so excuse me. Here's the problem the Sixers run into when it's Tyrese and Paul without Joel. Neither one of those guys is a solo leverage creator in the half court. And what I mean by that is that Tyrese Maxey is not someone who consistently just breaks guys down and is going to get whatever shots he wants, right? When he's in the open floor, that's absolutely the case, right? Because he's going to run by everybody. But when you task him with consistently beating people and then, making the read beyond that, or making the right play at the rim, a lot of times he's getting bullied by the other guy. And so that turns into a conversation amongst the fan base like, oh, he doesn't get a good whistle. No, part of the problem is that he does not get himself into advantageous positions where he can put a shoulder into somebody. So oftentimes it's those shots we see. It's the runners. He's fading away from the basket. And so when they get into these situations late in the game, if he doesn't have Joel to play off of, those weaknesses become more glaring. It's the same thing with Paul George, right? Like Paul George's best moments in this game, not as a shooter, but as a driver, are plays where they already had him on the move when he caught the ball. He's already basically ball's in his hands and he's turning the corner and getting downhill. It's not Paul George working from a standstill and trying to use his first step at 34 years old to get by somebody, because he can't do that. When you're asking him to do that, he's not going to be able to do it. He is not that guy anymore. And so when the game slows down and it's a half-court game late in the game, you need someone who is a leverage creator. And that, for whatever Joel's weaknesses are in the half court, and we've discussed them many times over, he can create leverage for himself, and he can create leverage certainly for Tyrese. And that's part of why that two-man game works and is so important for this team in the guts of the game. So not having Joel there, both for, just throw him the ball and try to score, but also to help Tyrese and Paul get separation where they're not having three guys bear down on them. That's where I think you really missed him in that moment tonight. And look, you still got to win that game. Like, that's not an excuse. It's an identification of their skill set. Do whatever you got to do. If you got to call your second to last time out earlier, regroup, make sure you get a good shot, whatever you got to do. But that's a game you need to win. And, Derek and Devon, you both have brought up at this point, part of the reason that stings is because you dug a deep enough hole that you don't necessarily have the luxury to just give away these types of games. If they had a normal start to the season, right, this is a game that's like, it stings a little bit. It hurts that you lost it, but you throw it away. They don't have throwaway games right now. They do not have that luxury.
And at the 2-minute warning, Al, our buddy, says in the chat that Maxey post-game took full responsibility for this one, as he should, because, he played poorly in this one. Jeannie also says that Maxey said he'll be better tomorrow, needs to learn and play through these types of situations. This is not the first time. I praised Maxey in the pregame when we talked about things that we like along this 4-game winning streak, and one of those things was how he has played. Well, to point it out and be fair, as we always are, he has done this before. So this is nothing new. And every time it happens, we discuss it and we talk about it because we expect better from him in these situations, especially when Joel Embiid is not out there. You're asking a lot of players like Eric Gordon, who gave you a decent game for the time that he is out there. He's out there in the crunch time of the game, but you can't expect him to be the one with the ball in his hands to close it out. That is for your all-star. That is for your all-star guard. And all you're asking him to do is not turn the ball over. Try to get his best possible shot for the team or himself in those situations. And he cannot continue to have moments like this. It's not all the time. We've seen him close out games plenty, but we've also seen games like this where we've all discussed it, Kyle, that they are in a spot where these types of games matter. Look, 4-0 on a 6-game road trip and game 3 of the 4-game portion of the West Coast trip, that's fantastic. Even if you win by 1, just because you need to win games. These are games that teams that are looking to do things later on, they're not there yet, but later on, these are the types of wins that you need to build up the character of a basketball team, especially when you're losing, when you don't have your best player. So good to hear him say it. Now go out there and do it.
Yeah, no, I have no doubt that Tyrese Maxey's a good self-evaluator and is going to be honest with his performance. I have no doubt about that. Unfortunately, he needs to make the passes.
He does.
And he just didn't do it tonight. And quite frankly, I think if you're going to be hard on Maxey, and look, I've tried to sort of toe the line where a lot of these lineups aren't built to win with Joel out. And I think watching Kyle Lowry start the game really drove that home.
Brother, I will get to him.
You are putting a lot on Tyrese's plate in games like this. But these were decisions that weren't even necessarily just pure attention based. It weren't just because of double teams. He was making really poor decisions, and you can hold him accountable for those decisions. But these are the kind of games that really do showcase, all right, we all love the kid. He's great. He's improved a lot. Great teammate, hardest worker you can imagine. he has some limitations. And those limitations really come to the forefront when you don't have that two-man game to rely on, when you don't have Joel Embiid, as Kyle was talking about, to really force rotations and create advantages. And all of a sudden, that decision-making, that passing, that vision, that ability to use his speed to draw teammate or to draw defenders and create shots for teammates, it's just really glaring how it's not there. And next thing you know, you're turning to an 87-year-old, Kyle Lowry, and he's throwing the ball all over the place too, because he's 80 freaking 7 years old, and you don't have McCain, and you need somebody who can dribble a basketball that is anywhere close to their prime. And boy, it's just, that one just stings. It stings.
Can I add this one too?
Walker watch. We're in Lithuania.
I want to add this too, because at the 6:30 mark, as we talk about the 5 minutes, and then most importantly, the 4 minutes where they just basically could not do anything. 6:30 mark, they pushed the lead to 99-92 when Maxey made a three.
Huge three. Yep.
Huge three. Then he goes
30-foot bomb. Yep.
And this was after he had taken, as we talk about some poor decision making, he took two bad step back threes that were deep and missed both of them badly, because again, maybe he just couldn't get by the defender. And I thought he had favorable matchups in those, and he did not use his speed to get by those defenders. I don't know what he was really worried about getting into the paint, but all right, two bad ones. He makes up for, makes the three, extend the lead to 7. Then as you talk about Derek and Kyle, you brought it up first about the lack of familiarity, or the fact that he's out there with Joel Embiid, knowing that he has him there and how to close out a game and all of that. The fact that he does not, again, still have that chemistry maybe with Paul George showed, where he drove right. Paul George was on the baseline. Somebody else was right to the direct right of Tyrese Maxey. Instead of throwing it to him, he tries to bounce pass and anticipate Paul George moving along the baseline, going back towards the three-point line, where he didn't, and he bounced pass and he goes right out of bounds because George didn't understand what Maxey was doing. Maxey didn't understand what George was doing, and it was just a bad turnover once again that just adds up to the list of the number that just kept building up as the quarter was closing out. So those types of things again, and then you saw after the timeout, they were standing there at the free throw line towards their end of the floor in front of the bench as the timeout was called. And they were talking before, as they were going to commercial break, before the camera panned away, because they were trying to figure out what happened, what needs to be done where they don't have a problem like that again. So as we are in, what is this, 30 plus games that they're in now, or 13 and 18 now, they're in game number 31, and they're still trying to figure out, because they haven't had enough time to figure out who they are together on the floor when Embiid is not there. So the things are still there. They still have a lot of games left to play, 50 games now left to play, and they're still trying to figure things out together out there on the floor. So those stand out. Those are there. We'll continue to talk about it all here with you folks as we hang out with you on the late night. Once again, Sixers After Dark, 113-107. Sixers fall. A late game collapse ends their 4-game winning streak. We'll continue to talk about it as they get ready for the Golden State Warriors tomorrow, right here on the PHLY Sixers Postgame Show, presented by Bet365.
All right, we want to tell you about Ace Hardware. If you've got home remodeling, they are the place to go. If you've got a leaky pipe at Ace Hardware Home Services, they're around the block with everything you need to fix it, including the person to do the fixing. As an incompetent home fixer, I really, really appreciate that. If you've got an air conditioning issue, they've got a person for that too. And if you've got a faucet you said you would fix over the summer, well, they've got that person as well, because now they're not just the helpful hardware folks, they're also the helpful home service and repair folks. From plumbing to heating and cooling, they've got the trusted pros to keep your home humming all year long. Ace Hardware Home Services, they're bringing helpful home, the helpful you love, from the store to your front door. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at www.acehardwarehomeservices.com to get you started on your next project.
I also have to tell you about TrueMark Financial Credit Union. We've been telling you since really with the holidays, we were really pushing for you to get that for your kids, or maybe a niece, nephew, some younger cousins, to help out with their financial responsibility and teaching them about money savings. And the free Greenlight account doesn't stop at the holidays, it extends. So going into the new year, not only are you trying to set up yourself to save the right amount of money during the 2025 year, you're also trying to teach the kids to start off the same way. So with the new free Greenlight account as a member of the TrueMark Financial Credit Union, the Greenlight app is changing the game, helping kids and teens learn how to save, earn, and spend wisely overall. They can set up savings goals, track their spending, and even get an allowance all right there in the Greenlight app. And here's the really cool part for the kids. Each kid gets their own debit card so they can make the purchases, learn real world money skills while you stay in control from their phone. So they feel good, they feel independent about what they're doing and understanding how much they spend, how much they have left, how much is going to be later put back in there. And they feel real good about themselves with this free, once again, as a TrueMark Financial member, Greenlight app. And with the holidays over, you can still go. You can still keep it going. It's the perfect time to introduce your kids to the Greenlight app. Get signed up today. Visit TrueMark.com/Greenlight for more information. Once again, visit TrueMark.com/Greenlight for more information. Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers Postgame Show presented by Bet365. Sixers fall and a tough one here tonight. Paul George, though, Derek did find his offense in this one, and he looked pretty good doing so. While it didn't carry over, he got in some foul trouble later on in the second half. Didn't see it in the fourth quarter. He found his offense in this one, and he looked really good. All the reason why, again, you don't want to waste a performance like this one from George.
Yeah, he was real good. He was offensively, he was real good for 44 minutes, and he had 30.
I'm glad you put the qualifier in there because I think chat would have rioted if you blamed anyone other than PG for the loss.
Oh, there's a lot of debates going on in the chat. Some people, you can admit when people play poorly. It's okay.
Yes. Final 4
no,
minutes.
His first 3 quarters were incredible. And it was another, we talked before the game, brought up some of the splits of when Embiid is playing and when he's not. And this was another game that was really going. I mean, it still is. He ended up with 30 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. He had really good numbers on good efficiency until you got to the turnovers at the end. He was playing an almost perfect offensive game. And he was limited a little bit by foul troubles in the first half. Ended up picking up a lot there in quick succession there in the fourth quarter, which played a factor. But he was getting to his spots. He was playing out of the post. He was making those, turnaround fadeaways. He was then using that to make skip passes to the corner. He was facilitating. He had some good 2-man action with Drummond and Yabusele. He was playing a very good game of basketball until he wasn't. And that switch happened almost instantly. That turnover with about 5 minutes left really seemed like a pivot point in both his game and the game at large. And defensively, he was great through most of the game as well. Really, really good. He had that, weak side help where he and Yabusele blocked Sabonis. He then had Sabonis had him, pinned deep in the post on a mismatch on the next possession, came out, poked the ball away, got a fast break started. He was really good defensively. And I really wish we could sit here and talk about those first, 44 or so minutes. Unfortunately, the last 4 minutes happened and it tainted what was otherwise a very good, very encouraging game.
So in those last 4 minutes or in the fourth quarter in general, my point of confusion, and it's a different version of the same conversation we have when they stop running the Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey pick and rolls. Why do they stop running actual actions for Paul George in the last 5 minutes of a game when we're increasingly starting to see okay, they have some pet plays for him, right? Like the one that I'm thinking of right now is that the one where he gets a flare screen out to the left wing and either he's got the shot or he's got an opportunity to drive. You recycle the possession. They had him coming off a pin down or two tonight, at least a couple that I can recall and remember. That's something we've been hoping for on this show. But then when it gets down to the final part of the game, it's like, hey, let's give Paul the ball up top and have him run a pick and roll or have him run a dribble handoff with somebody, and he's going to attack off the dribble. That is a recipe for turnovers. That is a recipe for exactly what you saw happen, right? When Paul George struggles, not just in Philadelphia, but historically, it's when he's doing that type of stuff in high-pressure situations, in half-court possessions. It's when you're asking him to be a creator that he simply is not, right? You want to have him on the move. You want to use him as a catch-and-shoot guy. Certainly, you want to use him as a pick-and-roll DHO attacker from time to time. But when you're running the clock down to, 8 seconds and then saying, hey, Yabu come screen or somebody else come screen, and you try to switch hunt, like, I don't believe in that as an offensive philosophy. And I think they got a little too trapped in it's the old prevent offense. It's big time in the NFL, right? Where teams are up and then they decide we're not going to try to actually run our offense anymore. We're going to play really conservative. We're going to bleed the clock. And when you play that slow and you have those issues that I talked about earlier about guys that can't create real leverage and real separation, all you're doing is hurting yourself. You're not helping yourself by bleeding the clock and having these clunky possessions where two guys touch the ball and then they end up turning it over or putting up some garbage shot from the free throw line on a runner. Like, there has to be an understanding of this situation without Joel Embiid, without the guy that you can just dump it to and say, figure it out with 6 seconds on the clock. There needs to be a better plan for the offense. And that's not taking culpability away from Tyrese. That's not taking culpability away from Paul, but it's at the coaching level, at the team level. They all have to know we don't have our safety blanket. We don't have that guy out there. So we have to get into our sets in the first 8 seconds, not the final 8 seconds.
As you pointed out in pregame, the individual defenders outside of Ellis really aren't there. So when he's working that way, sure, you want to get others involved. Look, the ball was moving. He was still sharing the basketball. He just also scored.
For sure.
Why are you going away from him? Unless he got tired, unless something, maybe he fell on his back and that looked like that hurt, when he fell on his back after scoring a basket. I don't know how much that played into it. Just pointing that out. There was really no reason to go away from it and later on in the game. Sure, I mean, he's foul trouble also, but for him to have it going, no individual one player was stopping him, and it didn't really look like they were throwing too many guys at him where you had to force the ball out of his hands. Just let him do what he's doing and naturally have the ball get to everywhere else.
There was a possession in the fourth quarter, or maybe it was late third, but there was a possession I remember in the second half where somebody actively sagged off of Paul George, and he's probably like 26 points, 24 points deep at that point, and rightfully he put it up and made the three. But you're absolutely correct. It wasn't like they were showing him the traps and the hedges that Maxey was getting at times. He was able to get some one-on-one coverage, and then when he needed to beat it down the stretch, did not do a good enough job. But look, I think there's been pushback, and this always happens, especially this year, when we criticize Maxey, it becomes well, what about this guy? Nobody's sitting here and telling you that there's lipstick on the pig that was Paul George's final 4 or 5 minutes, right? He was bad. He's a huge part of why they lost. But I think there's this instinctual defense of Maxey where it's like, I think people are still treating him as if he's this little kid who it's like nice to have. He's a foundational player. He is a core piece of the team. He is on a max contract right now. He has a lot of responsibility. Mm-hmm. He is going to be judged accordingly. When he has a great game, a great stretch, all that, we will heap praise on him, and we will continue to do so. But I have no tolerance for the defense force, right? Like, he had a bad ending to the game. He didn't have an especially good game. That's okay. He has another chance to play tomorrow. And we can also bring up the context of, like, he's starting next to Kyle Lowry, who looks like one of us playing out there right now, right? In fact, great pivot point to talk about Kyle Lowry. Least favorite possession of this entire game. Domantas Sabonis ends it with a layup. Here's the sequence of events. The Sixers are about to force a Kings turnover. Kyle Lowry decides to run into the corner at Ellis as he's jumping out of bounds for the ball, realizes too late he can't get out of the way, gets spiked by the ball. They save the possession. On the ensuing possession that comes after that, Lowry gets obliterated by Kevin Huerter, of all people, on the offensive rebounding opportunity. The Kings get another possession on top of that. And at the end of the possession, Guess who ends up on Sabonis at the rim? Kyle Lowry, who has zero chance to defend that shot. So every bad piece of the play, he was somehow involved in. And he played, 17 minutes tonight, I believe, something in that range. Whatever, 17-21. 0 for 3, 1 assist, 3 turnovers. Get that guy off the floor. He cannot play. And if he's going to play, 10 minutes is the max. That cannot go over that. I just can't do it.
Well, and 10 minutes is the max, but it also has to be dependent on see how the first 2 or 3 minutes goes. If he's clearly overmatched, get him out. And unfortunately, when you start going through the options, there aren't that many great ones. And I get that. It's got to be rectified. Honestly, I think that's one of the ones where you might have to start making a move. And I know Daryl doesn't want to, but by gosh, we need a guard in here ASAP. Doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to be a big splash. You don't have to give up your resources, but you have an open roster spot and you can't keep going. Well, is it going to be Eric Gordon today, or is it going? And Eric Gordon obviously played very well. Or is it going to be Kyle Lowry? Neither of those are viable options, not for a dependable night-to-night solution.
Sounds like you guys are calling for Jeff Doughton. That's what I hear.
Maybe, honestly, at this point. Hey, listen, Justin Edwards got burned tonight.
Yeah,
and
he did.
He
did.
He didn't
He
look
was a plus
completely out
minus
of his
god
depth.
in this one too. He did absolutely nothing and had a plus 11 in the first half.
He played all right defense on DeRozan, just better offense.
Played all right, but I think he didn't have any points and no assists and just played all right defense.
Yeah.
The fact that he didn't fall flat on his face, I think, is an accomplishment, given that he hasn't played real minutes in how many months, do you think?
Yeah.
Since October. Yeah.
When the preseason.
Even then, those aren't real minutes. That's I'm talking about in a game that matters. You're talking about last February or March, right? That's a long time ago.
Yeah. Rough one. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens tomorrow when it comes to availability for Kelly Oubre. See how he looks and giving him another guard out there. But yeah, Lowry's minutes were tough there tonight overall. All right, we'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more about this one. We'll get to your super chats. We'll give you the player of the game. No surprise of who that will be. We'll do it all right here as the Sixers fall once again 113-107. They are now on the season 13-18, snapping their 4-game winning streak. They are getting ready to head to San Francisco to take on the Golden State Warriors as the second part of the back-to-back in the final game of the West Coast portion of the trip. We'll continue to talk about this one, though, before we discuss the San Francisco trip right here on the PHLY Sixers Postgame Show presented by Bet365. All right, folks, we got to tell you about our presenting sponsor, Bet365, and they had me a little scared there. Yabusele did. I went with the 1.5 over for the made 3-pointers. He did those in the second half, and he had me sweating a little bit because he wasn't getting enough touches. They were playing a little pace without him on the floor there in the first half. Wasn't sure how it was going to look, but I was able to do so. As I said in the pregame show, I'm on my phone, so I'm not lying to you. I'm on my phone on my app, sending it to Bree, saying, hey, we have to adjust. Kelly Oubre is officially out. We have to adjust our picks here tonight. And last minute went with the Yabusele choice there on Bet365. And Bet365 has over 90 million users worldwide. Again, live streams of over 780,000 events each year, including the NBA, NFL, NHL, and Major League Baseball. And with the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports, you have to take advantage. And right now, new customers can bet $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Using the code PHLY365 when you sign up, deposit the $10, place a bet of $5 to get $150 in bonus bets. And those bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. And right now, with everything going on with professional basketball and even with the football early payout, we have some games left for college football. And if you, with the early payout offer, if you're a winner, if your team in college football and pro football goes up by 17 points with an instant payout on straight bets and parlay selections marked as winners. All right, every day, we power up the odds on hundreds of bets. Now is your chance to win right here on Bet365. Keep an eye out for our custom PHLY bets and boosts. Download the app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up to get 150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
Well, guys, I know tonight doesn't feel good for the Sixers, but they've been on an uptrend, right? They've been playing pretty well lately. So between wanting to get to a Sixers game, wanting to get to a potential Eagles home playoff game, and some of the many events coming up in Philadelphia or elsewhere, our friends at Game Time always have your back to get the best price, the best seats, and the best experience of any ticketing app in the marketplace. They have all kinds of curated deals that make it easier to find the best price on great seats. They even have a new feature called the Super Deal, the best value for that event, and all the other features that we'd love to tell you about around here, like those panoramic seat views, right? Whether you're going to the Sphere, the Link, the Center, it's the Wells Fargo Center. We can call it that here, even at the Sixers won't. No matter where your event is at, you can see exactly where you're going to sit, what that view is going to be like, and they even change it for the event. So if you're going to an event, a venue for a concert, you get a different view than you're going for a sporting event, and Game Time simplifies that for you. So you know before you go what it's going to be like. Oh, by the way, they also have their lowest price guarantee where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you can find a better deal through a competitor, but you can't. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Devon?
Game time.
Who?
On a late night.
I just want to point out, Lonnie Walker had 4 threes in 16 minutes against Juventus the other night.
Walker watch. We're
brought up for no reason at all. Yes,
we're on Walker watch.
On it.
Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers Postgame show presented by Bet365, where you can be on the Walker watch with the team here as we wait for Lonnie Walker to come back stateside and come back and play for the hometown team, the Reading native. Maybe we'll see. We'll see how it goes there. I was just looking at, who was it that just said this? Doug Craig said, it sucks we stayed up and watched those last 3 minutes. I'm going to bed annoyed. So.
Yeah, it does. I had much more fun the other night.
Yeah, yep, no doubt. All right, let's get to the player of the game in this one, then we'll get to our super chats because we have a few of those. No surprise.
I'm sure this will be a popular one.
Yeah, 30 points, 4 of 7 from behind, 8 boards, and 5 assists for Paul George. A good all-around game, except for the 3 turnovers in the final quarter there for the 76ers, as he couldn't really get it going there late on for this basketball team. So, yeah, frustrating one for everybody here tonight. Let's get to the super chats here, and we'll talk about a few more of the other players here. Bernard, we start off with Bernard. That's what happens when you play Maxey 44 minutes and all of the second half, no energy at the end. Paul George and Eric Gordon not able to bail him out. Tough loss. And this has been something in these close losses when Maxey has these issues towards the late part of the game. Shooting is not great in the second half, specifically the fourth quarter, or turnovers. Bernard has been consistent with this all season about Maxey playing too many minutes and not giving him enough help.
Yeah. No, he plays too many minutes. I'm sure that leads to some mistakes. When you're tired, you make more mistakes. The problem is who the heck else are you going to play? Like we all saw
Kyle Lowry, baby.
Right? I mean, there's nobody else you could trust to run the offense. There's nobody else who can really dribble.
Yeah. Well, so we've talked about this some recently. I think this is where you really feel the McCain injury and his absence, right?
Yep.
Where being able to put Tyrese on the bench and say, we can replace you with a real shot creator is a powerful thing, because that's true with Joel. That's true without Joel. Jared was able to, basically be his own, an offense unto himself with a hospital lineup around him. And now that they're healthy, and now that some of these other guys are playing well, I mean, look, Caleb Martin looks like a normal basketball player again. Eric Gordon hit a bunch of threes and played well tonight. Andre Drummond, who we can talk about at some point, had a pretty good game. And I think if not for, I'm sure there are restrictions and whatnot he's dealing with, probably should have played more based on Sabonis having 21 freaking rebounds tonight. Like I think having the big boy in there would have helped. And I had some possessions I really loved from Andre tonight. But yeah, I think not having Jared and putting yourself in a position, or being put in a position, I should say, where it's either you play Lowry or Reggie Jackson, that is not a place you want to be, right? And it's one thing to play a guy like that when you have like a couple stars on the floor, right? When it's all three are available and you're staggering them, and Maxey is out of the game, but it's like PG and Joel. But when you're asking these guys to step up and create and play a pretty big role, they just have no chance. So I think you're really feeling Jared on a night like tonight.
And by the way, I don't want to give Daryl Morey an out by pointing out how much they miss Jared, because that makes it sound like, well, this wouldn't be a problem if Jared didn't get injured. And it wouldn't be a problem, but they didn't come into the season expecting Jared McCain to play major minutes and be a linchpin of their rotation. They came into the season thinking that Kyle Lowry and Reggie Jackson and Eric Gordon had enough left in the tank that they wouldn't have this problem. And it was a complete and utter disaster. All three of them have been a disaster. And that's why you're in this situation. And you almost got lucky because Jared was good enough where he could have papered over some of those problems. But now he's not here. And so your mistakes are coming back to bite you.
So to stay on this for a quick moment, Embiid comes back, Kelly Oubre comes back, KJ Martin comes back. You still don't have Jared McCain. You're still left with the same options that you both just laid out. And we'll even add Jeff Doughton into that mix just for the conversation because of guards that you necessarily do not trust to help Maxey in that regard. What are the options outside of the trade deadline? I'm talking now before the trade deadline. Embiid's going to miss more games, and you're still going to be in this particular situation again, where they're going to have a close game, and you're going to need somebody else to help him out. What are your options?
A 6'4" guard from Reading, Pennsylvania. Lonnie Walker. No, I mean,
now,
your point.
He'll solve the scoring part, but
he's not going to solve.
Yeah, no, he's not a playmaker. Well,
you're not going to find a guy with a minimum to fix the problem.
Yeah,
probably.
I do think it is a trade deadline thing. Like I think increasingly, if you're making a trade that's strictly about trying to win this year, I do think they need to get another guard who's actually able to play playoff minutes, because I don't believe in Lowry or Jackson as one of those guys. And like, it would be insane to have another small guard on the roster in many ways, but with McCain basically ruled out for the season, unless they go on like a finals run, is probably the only way he even has a chance to return at any point. I think you almost have to get another guy, because I don't think it's sustainable right now. And I don't think you're going to be able to get away with it in the playoffs, where you try to buy, 5 to 10 minutes of rest for Maxey, and you have to go to a 39-year-old or a Reggie Jackson. Like they're going to have to use some resources, and I don't think there's any way around it.
Yeah. No, another guard was my priority even before the season began. And that's when we thought that, Kyle or Reggie or Eric, probably specifically, had a little more life left in their legs than they have shown that they do. So with them, being unplayable, and Kyle said unplayable in the postseason, I would argue they've been kind of unplayable in the regular season, and that's a big part of the problem we're here. You need to pursue that. And also, like, Yabusele has been much better than expected. Has played better next to Joel Embiid than expected. So that power forward spot, which was the other area of need that a lot of people were looking, that's not nearly as high of a priority. So yeah, I think it's very clearly, look, if you can get a two-way wing, you always get a two-way wing, because those are in such high demand and short supply. But I think in terms of positional need, like that two guard or just another guard is a glaring need.
And Derek, I'm glad you brought up the two-way wing, because I think one of the other things you see tonight is, because Kelly can't play, you end up in more of those multiple like 2 and 3 guard lineups where nobody's taller than 6'4", where at least if Kelly plays, that's not going to prevent Lowry and Jackson from playing entirely, but you're going to cut down on their minutes, and you're going to cut down on the opportunities or the parts of the game where you have to play them together. And so I'm in full agreement. If you can get a two-way wing, you get a two-way wing and you figure the rest out. But I think if you're assuming you can't get one, you got to get a guard.
You really needed Ricky to not be a bozo tonight.
Yeah, he was bad. Yeah, big time. What the moment was that type of night. Just real fast, as you guys were laying all that out, following the question, including tomorrow's game, up to the trade deadline, February 6th, they have 19 games on the schedule before the trade deadline. So if we're talking about looking at Embiid maybe missing a few games, who knows how long some of the others will be out. They have 19 games. So you imagine, unless the other guys fix something along the way, this might crop up once again. Another super chat here. Avi checking in. The previous 10 games, 29th in three-point attempts, 27th in rebound, 28th in opponents' three-point attempts. Not a winning formula. Was it luck? 1-7 from three after 51-37 in the first half and 0 for 3 in the bad run to end the second half. Avi, we appreciate your super chat.
So the only thing I just want to, because he's right on opponent 3-point attempts. If you go by per possession rebounding, they were mid-pack. So I just want to point that out. Like, part of the reason they don't have many rebounds, they play a slow pace, yada yada yada. But yeah, they were about mid-pack when you go per possession.
Well, and I would also say some of the 3-point numbers is reflective of Joel playing more.
Yes.
Where you're ending a lot more possessions with him at the nail, him in the mid post, Joel getting fouled, whatever it is. So, like, certainly you don't want to be 29th. You don't want to be 28th in opponent threes, yada, yada, yada. Like, that's certainly true. But I do think there's some context to those numbers that's important to consider. I would say, yeah, they needed to shoot more threes tonight in the second half, certainly, because part of the reason they were able to build the early lead is on the 3-point margins. They were ahead. So, I don't know. Simple sometimes. It's a math problem.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's they have some aspects of their profile that aren't great. And the 3-point ball is something I think we all hoped would get better. We still haven't seen all that much with Embiid and the big three, especially if Paul George ever gets going, which I know sometimes tough to believe will happen. But you're missing, like, they force a lot of turnovers. They don't turn the ball over much themselves, at least for the first 44 minutes of a game. They get to the free throw line a lot. So they have aspects of their statistical profile that project well, but the 3-point shot is a glaring problem. And rebounding has been a problem. Although, like I said, if you look per possession, it's been a little better of late.
All right, move on to Jake M. Appreciate it again, Avi, for the super chat. Jake says, why do the Sixers even run so much pick and roll with Joel out? Nobody is scared of Caleb/Drummond on short roll, and even if Maxey makes the right read, there's no upside. It just gives him an excuse to be passive. It's from Jake.
Well, they got to run something.
And pick and roll is as we know, is the number one play in basketball. So you're gonna run it.
Yeah, look. Go ahead.
No, go ahead there.
No, I was just gonna say, like, it's a good way to get Tyrese space, so you want to do that. And Paul has been a pretty good pick and roll passer through most of the season, and it's a way to get your bigs involved, even if they are not naturally scorers. And I think you see that a lot more with Yabu, who makes more of those opportunities than Drummond does. But you just want to find, like, you can't ask Paul to ISO, 40 times a game. He's not that kind of player anymore. So you're just trying to find ways to manufacture space and an advantage. And I don't think they run, like, a crazy amount, but it hasn't always looked good for sure.
Yeah, and, like, they're not a team that's going to run motion offense or something like that, right? Like, they don't have good enough.
You can't run motion offense when half of your team are bozos.
Yeah, like, it's just you don't have enough collective basketball IQ or passing ability to run stuff like that. And you wouldn't want to run stuff like that with Joel as the focal point as well when he's out. So, like, that's a road to nowhere. They run plenty of dribble handoffs, so it's not like it's just pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll. People don't like the dribble handoffs a lot of time, including me, right? When it's just the weave and they go side to side and don't go anywhere. I think at the end of the day, you have to come back to, some of this is about limitations of personnel. And Jake is pointing out there was a little bit too much of Caleb on ball tonight as a creator. Now, that being said, I do like what he has shown after coming back from a layoff there. Physically looks better. He smoked one of the easiest layups I think I've seen in NBA history tonight somehow. So we'll have to ignore that. But yeah, and look, I think it's more about you got to iterate on the pick and rolls, the DHOs, and get into some more second side actions. And, it just playbook variety is what you want. And frankly, what I just wanted tonight was to actually run some freaking offense at the end of that game, right? Don't just default to lazy ISO switch hunting stuff, because it didn't work.
Yeah. The George stuff worked without the offense. He did that on his own a lot early. In the end, you needed to run some stuff to close out the game. Liam, with the final super chat, what do you think Daryl and Nick talk about?
Music.
There you go.
I would guess basketball would be top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
Second,
wins.
Second might be Daryl trying to sell Nick the NFTs that have depreciated in value over the last 5 years. Third would be music. Oh, we can make a top 5. I'm sure they talk about lots of other sports stuff too, right? Like they're sports fans outside of basketball, so I'm sure it's plenty of that. It all comes back to sports.
Always I honestly don't know if he was like trying to get like a real answer or if he was trying to make a snarky comment. Either way, I appreciate.
That's why I gave him both.
Kyle, you did want to give a couple of minutes on Andre Drummond's play tonight and what he did.
So look, I've been a harsh critic of him this year. I feel like we all have at times, right? But I thought he came in and he played with the sort of energy and purpose that I've wanted from him all year. And so there were 2 defensive possessions, one from Paul George, one from Andre Drummond, that are like Kyle Neubeck possessions, where it's you see one thing happen and then it's a domino effect. So the one that Andre had was he was pretty far out of a play and then made a real concerted effort to get back in the picture, make a contest at the rim, and it forced Sacramento to recycle the possession. I think it ended up, might have been Ellis in the weak side corner, and Caleb gets on him, hugs him tight, and they junked up the whole possession. But it all starts with Andre getting there and forcing that pass in the first place. So then they get a bad shot at the end of the possession. Andre gets the defensive rebound. They get a run out, Reggie Jackson 3. And it's like one action can turn into, a whole sequence of events. And when you're a team in the Sixers position, that's the sort of mentality you have to play with. So the Paul George one that was similar, second half, I believe he blocked Sabonis or at least challenged the shot around the rim that he missed. Kings end up with the ball still, and Kevin Huerter is attacking from the corner after a couple passes. Paul George from, I think, like the free throw line comes out of nowhere and is like hanging in the air on a contest. Huerter has to hesitate long enough that now Yabusele has an opportunity to get back into play, and he gets the block and they go the other way. And it's 2 different examples of the same thing, which is never give up on plays, right? Like you can't control whether your teammate is going to get out to a shooter or make that rotation. You control your own actions. And there have been too many times early in the year where I saw Andre just sort of check out or, look, I'm so big, I don't need to really do as much as I could. I'll give like enough of an effort, but not the full way. I thought his effort was fantastic for most of his minutes tonight. And I think if he played with that sort of effort all the time, we'd be talking about the same Andre Drummond that we saw the first half of 2022 or whatever year that was, 2021. The years all blend together. But that was where everyone was so thrilled with like, this is the best backup Joel's ever had, blah, blah, blah. And I think I saw flashes of that guy tonight. And that's aside from he had a pretty good offensive night. Rich was in here in the chat at the start of the show saying, you got like 4 different buckets out of Andre Drummond post-ups. You got to win that game. Yeah. And he's right. He hit like an up and under reverse layup and had some great plays on offense tonight. But I'm much more dialed in on and encouraged by the defensive stuff, because that's where he's going to make or break his minutes, right? Is right there. If he scores every once in a while, great, but I don't especially care. So good job, Andre.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
There were
1:30
56
in the
minutes
morning.
into it. I don't have that much on Andre Drummond. He played better for sure.
You guys got me?
Yeah,
Yes.
you're here.
All right. So AirPods died,
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You just got to
So,
work the mute button hard and fast, you know?
But no, just good minutes. I mean, he had those drop steps. They were Andre Drummond drop steps, looked pretty good. Then you had the a couple left-handed, right-handed hooks that are just dropping, and looked good. Looked good tonight overall for Andre Drummond. All right. Anybody else that you guys want to talk about before we get out of here?
Wow, WTF moment of the night. And Nick Nurse immediately pulled him for it.
He was gone. We don't see him
Ricky
for 2 more
Council
weeks.
throwing a midair behind the back pass in traffic to Andre Drummond. And that was in my head, I was like, oh, he's coming out. And Nick Nurse was just like, points down the bench.
You knew it was happening.
Get this bozo out of here. And I said in my recap, it's like, dude, that in a nutshell is why they don't trust him, right? It's why Nurse doesn't give him a longer leash. It's that play is a perfect representation of the problem.
Yeah. And you've got to know, like Ricky knows in his heart that Nurse doesn't trust him.
Yeah.
How did you possibly think that was a good idea?
It's a 6-point game. It wasn't like if it's a blowout and it's garbage time, like, all right, bro, but what are you doing?
You're not skilled enough to execute that pass. Andre Drummond even getting the ball wasn't a high enough value to even attempt the pass. You know your coach doesn't trust you. It's all about decision making. What are you doing? It was mind-boggling. It was absolutely, and like Nick got him out so quickly. I didn't even see the substitution. It's just like he made that pass and like he was teleported off that floor.
You didn't have to see it. You knew it was coming. You knew it was happening.
No,
I thought he was going
to look down. You're like, there's no way he's still on the court. I don't even remember the play stopping, but there's no way he's still. They're going to sub him out like hockey style, where it's mid play. He's getting out. He's got that hook where he just
that bitch, man.
He will be excluded from the next council of Rickies. He will not.
All of a sudden, he just thinks he's Magic Johnson. It's like, bro, you've got to like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Not good, Rick. No. May not see Rick tomorrow in San Francisco. Might not.
You might not see him for like a week and a half, and they don't even have any wings left, and he might not play.
Nah.
That'd be a 4-guard lineup, and 3 of them are collecting AARP.
I feel like that's a good place to end, right, fellas?
Yeah, I think so.
A little levity.
I think so. Because we'll be back tomorrow. We got to do this again tomorrow as the Sixers take on the Golden State Warriors. And that will also be a 9:30 pregame for us right here, presented by Bet365, our presenting sponsor for both pre and post game. Make sure you download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Remember, must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, it's time for the world famous. First time for the 2025 roll call.
Hey, real quick, I don't even know if he's in here tonight. Shout out to my guy, Jay of the Jungle, who I have forgotten like 6 different times on roll calls recently. That's my guy. Love you, buddy.
Including last show where he gave us a super chat and he still got forgotten.
He did. But thank you to Jay. Thank you to Al, the 2-minute warning.
What up, Al? What up, Jay?
Money Mar, Phi Chi, Brian Knight, Michael B, my girl Winona.
Hey, Nona.
Bernard McCoy. Sir Schmooey, X-Man, Glenn A, Carlos, Students World, Joaquin, Reek Gotti, Philly Sports Enjoyer, Philly 4for4, Vic. I saw Jess was in here. She's sick. She's under the weather. Feel better. Jess, obviously.
Right age.
Jeannie went to bed. Shout out to Jeannie as well. Lonell Robinson. Who else we got in here? We probably got to get out of here, folks. It's almost 2 a.m. Thank you for coming through, each and every one of you. Especially thank you to our super chatters tonight. Abby was one of those. Bernard was one of those. Hit the subscribe button. Jake was one of the Jake M. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. And if you hit the thumbs up button, you will free us from this West Coast trip prison soon enough. But also say thank you to super producer Bree for holding it down behind the boards. We'll be back for pre and post game tomorrow night against Golden State, and hopefully so will Joel.
The snoring has started.
We all silly like the mayor.